Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Danny Morley.
And today we are joined with a special guest. He's the host of Living Once Twice podcast and a friend of ours. Give it up for Justin Oliver, everybody.
Welcome, Justin. It's very rare we have guests on this podcast. So we're very excited to have you here today. So thank you.
No, much gratitude to you both. I appreciate y'all for having me.
Yeah. So Justin, I think that there's an interesting story of how you and I kind of met, and you've had me on your podcast, Danny on your podcast, and Rachel on your podcast. And so why don't we talk a little bit about that and like how you got like introduced to me and like everything at MSU?
Yes. It's a kind of a 2-year journey going back to October 2022, where I was in a space. I was like on a sabbatical from work, and I had just been on a drive, and I was listening to the Lavender podcast, and your episode came on, and it just clicked with me. Everything that you were talking about, Ellie, from your own journey of discovery, going into the pain, how going into that has helped you evolve. I was like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I need. And I remember like repeating that episode. I've listened to it 3, 4, 5 times. And then I was like, I've got to reach out to her. And so I reached out to you. And that was kind of happening while I was also learning about the book, Mason's Way. And it was just like, again, the roadmap that I've been looking for and searching for, I found once I got connected to you. And then once I started reading Rachel's book, and everything else is kind of just grown from there in terms of getting, learning and connecting with Danny. And then, as you mentioned, getting to finally have a chat with Rachel and expressing my appreciation to her.
Yeah. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about where you were at before you because that's the story with me and Danny too, right? I think he and I were in a place in our journey where we had tried everything, right? We knew that we had a lot of issues. We knew that we had a lot of, problems. And like, I was really struggling with depression my entire life and things like that. And then one day I heard Rachel speak on a podcast, and I was like, everything that she's saying, I don't even understand the depths of this, but my soul is going, yes, 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 yes. And then when I jumped into that work, I was like, oh, this is what I've been searching for my entire life. And here it is. And so talk a little bit about where you were at and the kind of work you've done on yourself before you heard this and it hit your soul.
Yeah. So at that point where I was at a rock bottom. Like I had sabotaged everything from my like love, peace, joy, freedom. And so what got me though to that point before was, what I kind of learned was I was running from myself. I was running from the pain, and the things I was using to like numb and substitute it wasn't taking me to a place of like fixing my problems. Right. And so, but before that, I tried different things. I had done the therapy. I had done, meditation, yoga, reading books, but looking back on it, I was doing a lot of surface level stuff. I wasn't really going deep, and I wasn't going and doing it in a way that was consistent to change. And so again, I hit a rock bottom. And so I was just like, okay, how do I get back up to the surface from here? And again, coming across your episode, it really connected with my soul, because I was like, yeah, I need to get rid of this pain that I'm feeling. I don't know how to, I don't know what to turn to. So I was kind of in this season of surrender. And that's what got me on this pathway of like, listen, I'll take whatever the universe brings my way. And it was kind of like you were the kind of the pathway that was like helping me to find that North Star, which ended up being a lot of the teachings that I've gotten out of the book.
Beautiful. And when did you start reading the book? Was it 2022, you said?
Yeah, so I think I started reading the book probably end of 2022, going into 2023. I'm not gonna lie. At first, when I bought it, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be like this is a large book right here." So to digest here. So let's start diving in. And right away, though, it pulled me in. It sucked me in to the point where like I've got a journal here of like all of the notes that I've taken from the book, because that's how helpful and useful it was for me as a tool to like remold myself. Because like I said, I realized all the self-sabotaging ways before I can't go back to, even though that was kind of like my comfort zone. So the book gave me kind of some new tools to move forward with, and a new way of just like kind of really like living and looking at my life.
And for anyone listening, I had to just grab a copy. This is what we mean. Like, it isn't like a right. It's got a little bit of thickness to it. It's a little bit thick. It's not like a super quick, easy read in terms of its, its thickness, its length. But the way it's written, it's so easy to digest in terms of like the wisdom that comes through. It's so beautifully wrote, so that I feel like anyone coming in at any level can read it and they'll get something. And I don't know if you found this. I don't know how many times you've read it, Justin, but every time I read it, I take away new things. And it's like within each time I read it or read part of it, I'm reading it from the level of consciousness that I'm at. And obviously, because elevating and doing this work, every time I go back, I'm at a slightly different level. And so I'm picking up on slightly different things. And there's no right or wrong answers here, by the way, for this whole podcast. We're interested to see, your experience, through reading this, what we classify as like a sacred spiritual text. Like, how many times have you read it? Is it just a once through, or have you flicked back a few times?
That's the piece though, Danny, you're hitting on. Like, I only read it once through. However, the notes I go back to, and it could be, I just need to reconnect with a certain way of oneness.
Yep.
That's like just really calling to me in that moment. And so that's been the replay value of the book is that. And I agree completely with you. Like, if I'm in a different state of being, I will notice something that I didn't notice before. And so that is one of the things that I appreciate about it.
Yeah. What is so beautiful about all of this is that when your soul is ready and you're open, it will be given, right? And so that was the missing piece for you too. And I can so relate to it, because that was exactly what I was. I was ready for Rachel's teachings, and I was so lost in the sauce with everything that everybody was the spiritual world there's a lot. And a lot of it isn't sustainable, and a lot of it doesn't actually fully transform, our pain and our wounds. And so when it comes to you, something like this, like, you take it seriously and you dive in. And so, my next question to you would be, what were the big awakenings to you as you read this book? Because there's a lot of moments where like, wow, I had to really drop in and like be like, oh shit, like I've shown up really judgmental, and I've shown up really unloving, and I've definitely caused harm. And like, a lot of those things can be really difficult for us to face. And so I'd love for you to go into kind of the things that it's woken you up to about you, if you want to share.
Yeah, no, seriously, I do, because this is the reason why I needed this book. I needed something that would pierce my heart. Going through and hearing the words, it was like, oh, that really felt like me, like causing hurt, causing harm. And I think one of the biggest things was like my lack of taking ownership of my healing, of my behavior, had gotten me to the point. Like, it's nothing else out there besides, it all roots back to me. I wasn't taking ownership and accountability in the harmful ways that I showed up, of not doing the work, not doing the healing, not being consistent, and having to like own that and own the karmic consequences of it. And then it's my job to now do the work, whether it's making the amends, doing the work of healing myself, and not repeating that behavior, and holding myself to a higher standard than I wanted to hold myself to before. It's like, I cannot go back to how I was and how I showed up before, and having to really like own that. And so that's like, that was probably one of the major things I always go back to. Speaking of when I reread, it's that the first way, the way of responsibility.
Yes, sir.
I roll in that.
Yeah, I was just about to say, the first way of oneness, the way of responsibility. That's it. One of my favorite things about this book is it gives some structure, some like a blueprint to enlightenment, right? That's really what it is. But also to how to what I feel like is like, be a good human, be a loving human. And it's really easy to get lost in your mind about, oh, well, what should I do in this situation? What shouldn't I do? And, the work Rachel always teaches is drop into your heart. and always look for the answer within your heart. But then also, like, this framework allows for, like, okay, well, let me begin. This happened to me today. Am I being the way of responsibility? And in this case, it was, no, I wasn't. And I was trying to create a story in my mind that, like, well, I need to honor the fact that maybe I don't want to do this thing, and maybe this person needs to honor that. And I went back to, well, am I being responsible? Because that's the first way. And I wasn't. So it's like, well, all of that mental chatter that I was creating around this particular scenario, I was like, well, I've like, all of that doesn't mean anything because I'm not being responsible in this situation. So let me just start there and become responsible. And then, you know, maybe in the future, you know, if this same scenario pops up, it will be a different situation. But I love the fact that I have this, okay, am I being responsible? It's almost like a checklist that you can go down and be like, okay, am I responsible? Okay, am I being patient? No. Okay, well, looks like I need to be more patient. Let me embody that enlightened frequency. And I think it's really easy to, something like responsibility, to skip over responsibility. Like, that's not enlightenment. Like, enlightenment is levitating, right? And enlightenment is like, you know, leaving your physical body and becoming, you know, like enlightened being, an ascended master. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe that is in some place, but it starts with just becoming responsible as a human. And it's so simple. And then when you feel that feeling of when you're showing up responsibly, when I tidy my whole house and I, you know, do all of my adulting tasks and swear away all the financial things that I've been procrastinating and putting off, it feels so good because I'm showing up responsible. And I've never seen anywhere else talk about the fact that feeling of responsibility is an enlightened frequency. And if we can all become that, just that first way, wow, as you said, like just owning and taking accountability for my own journey, my own healing. Like if we all did that on the planet, wow, what a world we would be living in. And that's just the first way of oneness. So imagine if we all became the ways one day.
One day. Truly. And, you know, I think that for all of us, when we first got introduced to the ways of oneness, the one that was really screaming to me was the way of connection. I've been so disconnected from my divinity, from my soul. And I think growing up very religious in Christianity, being so indoctrinated, like that was the first way of oneness that was really given to me. And that's the one way of oneness that I but like I call in every single day before I coach, before I do anything, is the way of connection. So I'd love to know from the both of you, what way of oneness really jumped out? I know for Danny, it's the way of surrender, and you could go into that, but just what way of oneness to you was the one that really like stuck out, that you're like, ooh, that's the one that I'm definitely missing?
Yeah. So outside of the way of responsibility, which was like number one, I was like, okay, I'm in the right place because I haven't been responsible. So I felt that. The way of harmlessness and gentleness also sticks out to me because I wasn't showing up that way. Like I have to kind of honor again the hurt and the harm that I've caused, especially in like intimate relationships. And there was a powerful word about it's either like there's a powerfulness in being gentle that really stood out to me. I think that's kind of how it was phrased. And now my mindfulness about that, especially to myself, but then showing that outwardly, and that connected to like, oh, I need to heal myself because I don't want to unconsciously be projecting my own wounds onto someone else, you know, to another being, to another person, and outwardly to the world. And so that's one that really resonated with me. Another one.
Yeah, I'd love for you guys to talk about that because I feel like that's the one that men, the way of harmless and gentleness, like that's the one that men need to really become because we've gone so far away from that. Go ahead, Danny.
No, I was just going to say, you know, before this podcast, we were chatting, like, this is why we wanted you to come on, Justin, because, you know, you're taking accountability and responsibility for yourself. And then, oh, I can feel your beautiful soul just going, yeah, and I don't want to create harm anymore. Like, oh, it's just, if I had a hat, I would take it off right now. And I commend you for being in that energy and for being on this path, because as Ellie said, like, we as men have come so far away from being the divine protector, being the harmless. I mean, we used to be called gentlemen. That's for a reason. Like, a gentleman used to be honored. They used to look at gentlemen with like reverence. It wasn't seen as a bad thing. And now all of the toxic masculinity stuff about being hard and, you know, being emotionless and just push and you know, the I hate this term, but the fuck bitches get money kind of attitude that, you know, is out there, and that's seen as like the masculine cool thing, right? And as men, we've just got so lost, and I've fallen down that path in my late teens, early 20s. I'm seeing I'm thinking, okay, well, this is what a man is. This is what I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to idolize and worship. And then, like, all that does is create harm. It's not creating equality. It feels terrible inside of me. It creates shame. I've been going through this season right now of looking back at all the ways I've showed up in misogyny and not shown up in harmlessness and gentleness. And for all those times, I have to heal now all of the shame that's been layered in there for the lack of honoring that I had for women. And yeah, I just really commend you that you're on this path, and that way stuck out to you, because if we, as 50% of the world, as men, as whatever the percentages are, you know, roughly, could all become that way, harmlessness and gentleness, and create safety among the world, wow. No one will be looking over their shoulder. And, you know, as Rachel teaches, like, divine masculine energy is safety and security, and that creates the safety, and then divine feminine is like the openness. And, you know, we would have, I can only just dream about the world that we would live in if, as men, we would heal all the places that we've caused harm and create more divine masculine, safe, secure energy on the planet. It's just beautiful that's the way that you spoke of today.
Yeah. If I could just say something to piggyback off that, that's why for me, Danny, it was important to connect with you, because growing up, thinking about the circles of men that I've been a part of, there wasn't a lot of that type of talk of showing up, being emotionally safe, and what that means. That was not being a man, or kind of how you show up. Or if you did show up that way, you kind of think you would get questioned or picked on, etc. And so having conversation with someone like yourself, it's like, okay, there is another way forward, and we could show men coming behind us, young boys, that there is another way to do this, in terms of showing up as a partner, healing themselves, being harmless and gentle with themselves, so that they could offer that to someone else. So I have hope, because I'm like, if I don't heal this in myself, then yeah, when I do have kids, I don't want to pass this forward. But there is a lot of cleanup duty within inside of myself that I continually have to keep doing to continue, like, make sure I show up that way.
Yeah. And, you know, you guys are the tiny percentage of men, which means you're meant to be the leaders of men to become, you know, the way of harmlessness and gentleness. Not an easy task, but goddamn, you know, the fact that you guys are pulling up and going, yeah, I own everything that I've done that has been rooted in misogyny and patriarchy and toxic masculinity and all that stuff, and saying, I don't want to show up for that. I mean, like, that will blow women's minds. You know, like, I made a video on TikTok about, just Danny, and like how he shows up, and like how much he doesn't want to be what he used to be, and what kind of partner and a man he is. And it started going viral, and everyone's like, those exist. Where'd you get that from? Amazon? And things like that, you know? And it's like, they exist. Are they the majority? Hell no. But the minority, the ones that are picking up and going, yeah, it's time. Like, you guys are meant to blaze the trail for men. Like, let that really sit in, because to get to where you got to go, I'm owning that. That was a journey in itself, right? And then as more and men like you do this, and you become the example, it allows more men to be like, oh, I can be like that. It gives them permission, right? Because of the world that we live in. I mean, the fuck bitches get money. Like, holy shit, that I had all these flashes of my entire life of watching like music videos of movies. You know, it's hard for me to watch old movies now because there's so much misogyny in it. There's so much toxic masculine shit in there, and like demeaning women and degrading women. And it's all about like they're just objects, and it is wild. And no wonder women are so fed up with men, because they're not willing to grow up. They're not willing to see their shit, and they want to stay trapped in where they are. And it's men like you who are saying, no more. We have to change the world. And it begins within ourselves. And that's it. People think that like it's about getting everybody. It's like, no, it starts with you. Do what you do, and then watch how that ripple affects to everybody else. Like, it's profound what your souls came here to do, and definitely not an easy task.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure all the listeners kind of understand that we're speaking of the way, if anyone's not read the book, right, we're speaking of the way of harmlessness and gentleness. And that means it doesn't mean I'll always be a very gentle person. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean, just be completely soft all of the time, which is how our, a dualistic mind, a mind stuck in duality, kind of operates, where they go, oh, well, he's saying be gentle all of the time. No, there are times when, even in the way of harmlessness and gentleness, the example Rachel gives is if I was walking down the street, and I'll use Ellie, if Ellie was being assaulted by a man, I am gonna hurt that person, guaranteed, to get my Ellie into safety. 100%. It doesn't mean to go completely, soft, but it's where it's appropriate. Ellie is being harmed in that moment. So in that moment, it's obviously okay for me to intervene. But that doesn't mean that it's okay to always be like that and always be, trying to harm people and hurt people. And this, all of Rachel's teachings, they're all about oneness consciousness, meaning it's never this or that, it's oneness. And when I first started listening to her, I always had these questions, and it was, should I do this or should I do that? And her answer was normally, well, it depends. And it allows for complete nuance to come into the conversation, because it's not always about, well, I need to be gentle all of the time. It's like, well, when is it appropriate to maybe use my masculine strength? As a man, I'm stronger than generally women, right? So when is it appropriate to use that? And that's in protection when somebody's being harmed. Of course, like, we as men want to step up when someone is in danger and safety and security is at risk. But that doesn't mean we always want to be in that like fear, aggressive energy. It's there to be utilized, but for the most time, like, we're here to be harmless, and in that harmlessness we can create the safety. Because if the energy, somebody is in fear of being harmed, that just causes people to close. And I think I couldn't wrap my head around that whole concept. I'm still working through it and to some degrees. I'm not fully integrated that way. But I think it's really easy to listen to that and then go, well, I don't want to be just a complete soft man. And it's like, no, you don't have to be completely that all of the time, just when it's appropriate. And so I just wanted to bring that up. And Justin, I'd love to have you speak on that. Is that something that you had to move through, and in terms of your understanding, or something that you've seen show up in your life?
Yeah, no, great question. A lot of what you're sharing, though, in terms of how we use that in a situational, and then our accountability towards like each other. I think that's kind of how it's been showing up for me. It's like, okay, now that I am living to this new standard of being harmless and gentle, it's now my duty to make sure like the men in my circle, and I speak like in my case, like my brothers, having conversations with a younger brother that maybe 3-5 years ago, I would show up a different way, very immaturely, in terms of advice that I would give to him about dealings with women and engaging, to being like, no, we can't show up that way anymore. It's not right. And a lot of, again, the experiences and reflections that I have, it's like, yeah, there's guilt and there's shame, but I also know like a part of that healing is like, now that I truly know better and can do better, it's also my responsibility to making sure like those around me, I'm holding to that standard, versus keeping my mouth shut, or just being like, oh, well, that's their problem, they'll deal, that's their situation. It's like, no, I've got a responsibility in that now.
Beautiful. It's so easy to just close your mouth, you know, in those situations. And especially, you know, what we're speaking about, when you're going as a man speaking about harmlessness and gentleness, you're really going against the grain, as Ellie mentioned. Like, it isn't the norm to be like, oh no, I want to really respect the woman that I date. And that's shocking, right? That's shocking that that's the world we're living in, because there's a lot of toxicity out there. And that means, you know, if you're holding other people responsible, Justin, like, that means putting yourself in the firing line of their projections. And what a warrior. Like, what a warrior.
Also, it's uncomfortable. Don't get me wrong, because it's easy to look the other way, which I've done before. It's easy to say that's not my issue, that's not my problem. But again, with this book, I realized like I can't show up that way anymore. Like there's really no turning back. And so it's like, yeah, you do have to put yourself out there and on the line to stand for something finally, because in my case, I wasn't standing for anything of integrity. And again, these teachings have really helped me to rebuild that foundation.
Yeah, beautiful. You know, I think that the biggest and most important thing that, you know, it's so funny. It's so true. It's like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. You know, once you know, you can't unknow. And it's like, there is no choice anymore. It's like, my soul came here to make this place a better place. And how does that begin? It begins with me. And the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness is it's so beautiful, because as you're experiencing what you're experiencing, when you're triggering all of these things, you can just feel into, well, what, you know, Rachel always says, like, what ways of oneness is lacking from this situation? And like, I realized too, a lot of like what I grew up with, there was such a lack of harmlessness and gentleness, like definitely a lack of unconditional love, but holy crap, like a lack of patience, so a lot of times too, when I'm going into like a lot of inner child wounds and a lot of like some abuse that I've experienced and things like that will start to come up. When I'm there with my inner child, together, she and I will go, in what ways of oneness is lacking from this situation right now, as I'm being harmed, as I'm being yelled, as I'm being abused, and all of these things. And I'll bring in these frequencies as I'm doing the heart opening, as I'm alchemizing. And it's so beautiful, because it helps me to understand, like, oh, this is why the abuse was so tremendous. This is why it hit me so much, because there was no patience, right? There was no harmlessness and gentleness. There was no compassion. There was definitely no connection. And so bringing those frequencies as I do the healing work has been so profound, because it allows you to see, like, that's what was missing. That's why it hurt so much. And that's why it was unprocessed and so stuck. And it's so beautiful, you know, these frequencies. And I think a lot of people think these frequencies too are outside of us. And Rachel always reminds us, no, it's the beingness of who you are. You're connecting back to these frequencies that you are, and now embody them, integrate them, become them. You know, I think a lot of people can read this book and go, oh yeah, that's it, I'm that. And it's like, this is a process and this is a journey. And every single experience and challenge that you're presented with, it's about integrating and becoming what you really are. And so, yeah, it's just, it makes me really emotional because this is just profound work, completely profound.
Like, I say something about that piece of, like, that was the thing that I had to grow into, an understanding, and like, I am these ways of oneness. Yeah. For some people, because of their past, they may not identify, or they might think these ways of oneness are out of reach. But that is not the case. That is truly who you are. And this is, you know, a powerful part of Rachel's teachings for myself, is like, oh yeah, I've done a lot of wrong. I've caused hurt and harm, but you're not that. You are harmlessness and gentleness. Yeah. You are the way of surrender and patience. You are those things, but you've got to go, to your point, you've got to go inward to find it. And that is refreshing, because it's like, no matter what your past is, you can rewrite that and be the authentic, true being and soul that you are.
Yeah, Justin and I had an experience, I can't remember, it was a month or two ago or around that time, where I was in class with Rachel and she was giving a teaching to the coaches, and she was bringing in one of the ways, and she was teaching about one of the ways, I think it might have been unconditional love or something, one of the, like, the more powerful ways. Unconditional love is about number 14, so somewhere around there. And as she's saying it, I heard my mind go, yeah, but I'm not that. And I was like, whoa, that was the mental program that started playing. I was like, yeah, I'm not that way. And that allowed me to see that as she's giving this teaching, I couldn't accept what she was saying as truth because I had all this wounding that still felt I wasn't worthy enough to be the ways. And this is why, you know, anyone that comes through the MSU kind of ecosystem, the first thing we get them to move through is the power within, which is about connecting somebody to their internal power so they can learn how to alchemize and transform energy. And then after that is integrating the ways, right? These, as Ellie said, these enlightened frequencies. And if you know, if you are listening to this and you've read them and some things just aren't quite hitting, I can speak from true experience. It's probably because there's wounds in there that don't deem yourself divine enough to see the truth of what you are. And when that happened to me and I heard that program and I went into it after that class, it was a huge light bulb moment of where I was, and listen to this, I think it's called an oxymoron, in separation to the ways of oneness, right? The ways of oneness, there is no separation, and that's what they are. But when we have programs and wounding that don't see ourselves as worthy, as unconditional love, as the way of honoring, when we have that within us, we're in separation from oneness. We're in separation from our divinity. We're in separation to the ways. And it can be really challenging to kind of connect to what we really are when there's so much. And for me, that was another piece that was in my blind spot. And this is what we help people see. It's like, hey, what's going on in your blind spot that you can't see? Because if you don't know what's in there, then you're going to remain in separation from the truth, which is these ways. And that's kind of like the process that we take people through. Have you experienced any programs of those sorts that have come up that you've become aware of? I know you don't specifically do the MSU work, and that's totally fine. You know, we can use other language, but have you gone through any experiences like that of in terms of integrating these ways?
Yeah, so I've been kind of thinking like more about this, and trust me, I know eventually I'll be able to like do one of the courses and stuff like that. But the integration piece for me is like, again, beforehand, I was filling my void of inadequacy with all of the wrong fillings and kind of go-to vices and numbing myself in those different ways. But now it's like, yeah, I have something to go to of like, okay, in this moment, it's important for me to show up and own it, be responsible. Or in this moment, it's important for me to be patient, like, and to surrender. That's one of the things I really struggle with is surrender. I want to control a situation, or I don't want to wait for kind of the divine timing of something to play itself out. And understanding how selfish that is now, I'm able to call myself out on it because of these ways and just being like, no, things will happen in divine timing. I got to surrender my will to my God, to the universe, to nature. And when I have done that and found myself doing that and being conscious about doing that, I gain a sense of power in myself versus like how I would if I was like doing it impulsively, as I've done it before, or again, trying to establish some sort of like control, like I know the way, because my way has not worked. And that's what kind of got me to this point in the first place.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's like even today I was at the DMV, okay, guys. And I found myself at one point being very impatient. Like, why isn't this happening fast enough? Why aren't they moving? Why isn't this line, blah, blah. And it's like, Ellie, there it is right there. Become the way of patience in this moment. And just by like really just dropping in saying, I'm the way of patience, I'm the way of patience, I'm the way of patience, and just allowing that to come in, it's like, oh my God, I can stand on this line all day long. You know, it like these ways come in and so beautifully alchemize the program that's running, right? It's impatience, it's control, and all of us run control programs. Hot diggity damn. Like I was, a couple of weeks ago, I was like, I have no control programs. And then bam, the universe presented me to show me exactly that I control. And I was like, wow, like I'm so not surrendering to this. I'm resistant to what I'm experiencing, what is happening. So I need to control. And then the moment it's like, oh, here's the way of surrender coming through. And this is what I need to become in this moment. And then it's freedom. It's literally mental and emotional freedom. And like my soul came here to be free because I have been enslaved for so goddamn long. And these ways, when we bring them in, it's just like, when I get a taste of it, I'm like, this is what I want. Like, let's keep doing this. Let's keep becoming this. And I think when I read the chapters of what it's going to look like, New Earth, like living in the ways of oneness, it feels like you're reading a fiction story, right? Because how could possibly this world and this society and this species ever become that? And it's like, no, we are the warriors of the light that are here to become initiates of this, so that when we are on our transition deathbed, we're like, we did it. Soul, check it off. I did it. Okay. And we leave this place a better place. Like, we really came here to do this. Like, I really truly know and believe that whoever is called to this book, to the ways of oneness, like, we came here to do this and become this. And like, what an honor. And we are always going to be looked at in certain ways. People are going to project and all this stuff. It's like, we knew that coming in here. So it's like, all right, let's strap in and just go in for the ride. And yeah, it's an honor to, to meet souls that are doing this kind of work, because this is warriors work. This is not a joke. You know what I mean? Like, it is so much easier to be unconscious, to cause harm, to blame. That's so easy, right? And like, I've had to go through a lot of things in my journey where I'm like, man, it was just so much easier when I was asleep. Because now taking divine and full responsibility over, like, it's not an easy road, but that's the road that I want to be on. Like, I don't want a life of ease. I have a friend who's always like, Ellie, your life is so not easy. I'm like, yeah, girl, like, think about the path that I came here to do, as to why it's not simple, as to why it's not easy. And hot damn, like, I will choose this because this is what I came here to accomplish. And so, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, the first and the last not paragraphs, chapters, I couldn't think of the word then. The first and the last chapters of the book are touch upon what we're going through right now, this great awakening, and the world, the potential that the world that we could live in, if we, and I believe we'll make it to this new earth, and if these ways of oneness are fully integrated. And they really light me up. Rereading those, they really like light a fire in me, because I'm like, yeah, this is what I want to see. It's okay if you can't remember, Justin, because I know you said you only read it once. Can you remember reading those chapters when it's speaking about society and what it will be like and look like, kind of in the new earth?
Yes. Something that stood out to me, if I can remember correctly, it's also questioning in it. Maybe it was the way of equality. And this was also really powerful about the book, was just equality across the board, not just human to human, but human to what we would consider animal, human to nature. And it really was like, I never looked at a dog as a spiritual teacher. That blew my mind. And so that got me on a path of like, now when I see animals are other beings just like myself, and I could see that behavior. And I think this is kind of what is talked about in the new world, of like changing what we eat and questioning what, the process that comes from, or what it goes through. And I mean, it's opened my eyes to it more. Like, have I changed my ways in terms of everything that I eat? Not yet. However, it's something I'm more conscious of. And I think that's something that is, again, it's part of the new world question that you have that really stands out to me. Is there the creation of more equality, because we do live in a world with so much division and the different isms, racism, sexism, and everything else.
Yeah, equality is such a big one. Such a big one. Such a beautiful one. And ties in there again with harmlessness and gentleness a lot, of like the way that we, I can speak to this from my own experience. Look, I got a dog we're in 2024 now, last year. And it's really awakened me even deeper to seeing the divinity in all animals. And I definitely ran a lot of programs of separation. And I've been cleaning my diet up for a while now. But it's a constant reminder to honor those beings even more and more if I am choosing to eat any animal products. And the way of harmlessness or gentleness is, are we picking food, which I don't do this anymore, but am I picking food from, factory farmed animals? And I know Ellie is super passionate about this. So I'll let you take over, because I think this is a really important part, and it's something so simple and easy for us to start to do, is just start being conscious of, oh, where does this food that I'm consuming come from? And is there unnecessary harm being created because of this consumption? And can I make a different choice and get the same, health benefit and harm less beings, not torture the animal?
Yeah. And, I have a huge love for sentient beings. I always used to say, like, I love animals more than humans because we have a lot to learn from animals. And yet we treat them like they're lower than us, like they're less than us. And in reality, they are here to teach us what we need to become, which is unconditional love. I mean, you spend time with any animal and they will teach you so many things, so many things. It makes me want to cry. And, sometimes I look at the world and I feel really hopeless. And that's what I have to alchemize, because I'm like, the reason why we treat these animals the way that we do is because it's the way we treat ourselves. The disregard, the no honoring, the no respect, the no integrity, all of it. The macro is a direct reflection of what's going on in the micro within ourselves individually. And so I know that the more that people awaken to themselves, learn how to love themselves. I think one of the biggest moments, like 2 years ago, there was like this guy who makes all these videos about how there's all this poison and toxin and all of like Pop-Tarts and like Cheerios and all these things. And all the comments were like, I don't give an F. Like, I don't care. Like, that's so good. Like, I'll still eat it. And it just showed me, like, this is how far gone we are. This is how disconnected. This is how much we do not care about our own physical vessel, our own beingness at all. And the more that we awaken to all of that, as you awaken to your divinity, you will start to see the divinity in everything. Like today, me and Danny went on a hike and I kept screaming to him, like, watch out for the snails on the ground, right? Like, look at the snails. Like, if I see an ant on the ground, I will make sure that I'm walking around the ant, that I just don't want to harm anything. Like, I used to, like, even when I see people like plucking flowers out, I'm like, did you ask? Like, did you honor the flower? Just because you can't hear the flower does not mean that that flower doesn't feel. There's a soul in there. And it's like so much like just blinders and off because we're raised in this society. It's me. And it's like, wake up, because we have left that age. And now that me, it has become we. And so I just do this work, yes, for myself. And in turn, I do it for every single animal, every single sentient being that is on this planet, because that's who, like, it makes me emotional talking about it. Like, I'm here to do this for them, to be the voice of the voiceless. And, Rachel just had this podcast recently where she talks about how her orange tree outside in her backyard played fetch with her. And it's like, the more that we elevate these nature beings and these animals, will start to feel safe with us, because we are the frequency of harmlessness and gentleness, of honoring, of unconditional love. And because Rachel has reached those vibrations, a tree will play fetch with her. And that is how magical this entire experience and this life is, and who we are and these beings are. But we can't see it because we're so close, we're so disconnected. And so the more that we do this, like, what will unfold? Like, I used to watch Harry Potter and go, oh my God, so cool. I wish that was like us. It is us. And it is what we can and what we are. And the more that we become enlightened beings, the more like harmony and oneness and purity and magic and love will unfold. And yeah, that's why I keep going for really the nature and the animals, and yeah, humans, but really for, all of them that have been hurt and so destroyed because of us, what we've done.
And just to clarify there, Rachel playing fetch with the tree, it was with her dog as well. She wasn't running for the ball, the dog was. Just to clarify, I thought that was funny. I just had images about a tree throwing a ball for Rachel and her running around. Any other ways, Justin, that really stood out to you, that they're really on your heart, that you'd like to speak on before we wrap this up today?
Yeah, I think it's I'm pretty sure there's the way of forgiveness is one of the ways. And I think that's been a huge part of my journey, because of the coat of guilt and shame of waking up and being like, wow, I showed up narcissistic in this way in this relationship, or I rejected love, or just all the different things as I kind of, with a more sober mind, look back on, and understanding, like, it took each and every situation that I encountered, and I guess I would want someone to know this, like it takes every situation that you've encountered to get you to this moment. And even if your moment is like kind of at that point of clarity or asking for help, like it took every situation to get you there. So that's been a deep part of it, you know, as I work through my own kind of self-forgiveness, and then how, you know, I look at other people, if there's people along my journey that I have to show up and forgive, and just kind of understanding that. So I think that's really important to me, because yeah, looking at the way that I've been before, I can't unring those bells, but I know that now that I'm taking ownership and accountability for my behaviors, doing what I need to do to balance out my karmic debt, I know I could be a better person and a better human being, a better partner, better parent, everything else kind of going forward with the rest of my time on this planet.
Beautiful. What an honor to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Justin, for sharing all of that. You know, it's beautiful, and props to you, dude. Like, you're really here to do the damn thing, so keep going with the rest of us.
I appreciate you both, because y'all give me inspiration in my journey, because this is like life's work. It's not 6 months.
Yes.
It's not you do this for a year and you're good. Like this is I'm signing up for life. Like this is what I'm signing up for. And so being around you all, learning and getting to absorb your energy just inspires me to keep going and going deeper.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And for everyone at home, if you want to check out Justin's podcast, it's Living Once Twice podcast, obviously on every podcast platform. Is that correct? Okay, cool. Check it out. You're a great interviewer, dude. You got it. Okay. I told you that before. You got it. And as a fellow interviewer, you know, I could say that. So check out his podcast. And to everyone at home, The 20 Universal Ways of Oneness by Rachel Fiori is available on Amazon. Get it now. What are you waiting for? The boys have it in. And if any of you guys want to work with us, you know, set up a free consultation with us at masterselfuniversity.com. Share, like, subscribe, spread the podcast. It allows us to do it for free. And until next time, we'll see you guys then. Bye.